And today, November 20th, is International Children's Day, or World Children's Day rather. The date marks the day the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child in 1959 and the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989. Despite the good intentions of those measures, children continue to bear the brunt of war, deprivation of their rights and poverty. And joining me now is Cécile Aptel, Deputy Director of UNICEF's Global Office of Research and Forecasting. Good morning, Cécile, and thank you for joining us. On this World Children's Day, what are the biggest issues facing children worldwide?
Good morning. There are many issues facing children, many issues impacting their rights, violations of the rights of children in conflict, as your report just has shown. But also today, we have decided as UNICEF to bring the attention to a phenomenon that remains terrifying in terms of the impact on children, and that's poverty. We have in the world, in low and middle income countries, 1 in 5 children who lives deprived of at least some of the essential services. We're speaking of nutrition, water, health, housing, sanitation, education, basic services that these children are lacking. 1 in 5 children in low and middle income countries, that's 417 million children worldwide. So we really want to demonstrate this as something that has a huge impact on children. But as you say, children are impacted in so many different other ways.
Now, children are by definition dependent on their parents and guardians, so they invariably suffer knock-on effects of social and economic problems. Now, we all have children in our lives somewhere or other, be it our own children or relatives. So we definitely do feel a connection to children, but is it sometimes the case that even people who do have an affection for children can sometimes easily forget them, particularly those who are involved in policy making and in government?
That's the risk, which is that we feel that love and care for the children around us, but that's not necessarily reflected in policies. We see that when looking at policies that are effective to end child poverty. We know, in fact, what works. We know that to end child poverty, we can have access to essential public services, education, healthcare, again, water, sanitation, nutrition, that can be expanded through public services. But that means making the right political and budgetary decisions that put children and their families at the center of those decisions. We also know that social protection programs such as cash support for families are very effective. But there again, budgetary decisions, political decisions need to be in favor and supportive of those social protection programs. So to end child poverty, we need to make sure that ending child poverty is a national priority, that it is embedded. And that means people making those decisions. That's true at the national level. That's even also, of course, the case at the global level, where we need to have international political commitment to children's needs through the economic policies and budgets. And unfortunately, this is not necessarily very high in terms of the global policy discussions these days.
Now, here in France, official figures show that 2.76 million children live in poverty, and that's an indication that even high-income countries have their problems. Are these countries better equipped than others to rectify the problems, or are they also intractable?
In fact, in those high-income countries, there's even more of a possibility to allocate budget towards policies that are supportive of providing essential public services to children, to invest into education, healthcare, to support social protection program, cash support for families. So high-income countries have more of the financial tools at their disposal to prioritize children's needs and to end child poverty. Indeed, in a country like France, we see 9% of children in France experiencing severe material and social deprivation. That's 1 out of 10, and that's very high for a high-income country.
Now, there has been a lot of criticism in recent years of the effect of, for instance, social media or other technology on children. Is this something that UNICEF is taken seriously?
We do take this very seriously. I mean, in fact, the life of children around the world, not only in high-income countries, is really taking place online as much as offline. And there's interaction between these two dimensions. So we do work extensively with children, with governments, but also with technology companies to see how we can both optimize the opportunities for children through online services and even artificial intelligence, and minimize and even eradicate the risks. I'll give you the example of education. We really see that some schools around the world banning the use of phone, and we can see that as important in terms of protecting children's capacity to concentrate. But similarly, we also would not want to have complete ban that would mean depriving children from tools that also give them access to information and education, and in particular in some deprived areas. So this is not such a clear-cut issue. We really need to have more data to know not only how long children spend online, but what they do online. And obviously some of those activities can promote their well-being and their development, and other activities are extremely harmful. And we really need to boost the protection of children online as well, especially to ensure that they're kept safe.
Now, we've spoken about some of the problems facing children worldwide. Can you point to any successful initiatives that have managed to alleviate suffering and problems for children?
Sure, I will return to the question of child poverty. I mean, we've seen huge progress in terms of reducing child poverty. In fact, especially in the year from 2000 and for that decade, where we saw the rate of severe deprivation among children in low and middle income countries falling by a third. And that really means that globally we went from 3 in 5 children living in poverty to 2 in 5 children. So that was a massive development. And I'm just going to point out to one specific country, Tanzania, for example, that achieved a 46% reduction in severe child deprivation between 2000 and 2023. That was driven by government cash support grants to poor households, but also making sure that families could make their own decision on how to lift, to lift themselves out of poverty. So yes, there is really hope. We can, with the right decision, make sure that we eradicate child poverty. We can ensure that children's rights, including in conflict, are better respected by ensuring that those responsible for violations are held accountable. We have to really keep hopeful and keep fighting for children's rights, and to give also their children a space for them to express their views and participate in decisions today that will impact their future.
Now, young people, including children, have been to the fore of the fight against climate change, including Greta Thunberg most famously. Is there a sense that children are possibly on the front line of suffering from the ravages of climate change?
Unfortunately, yes. Children, because of their physical vulnerability, are far too often those severely impacted in case of heat waves, for instance. We know that especially babies, infants have their body temperature more at risk of not regulating sufficiently quickly. We certainly see that in case of extreme weather events, we have children, and especially younger children or children that may be living with disabilities, very much at the forefront of those most impacted by this. So children are suffering in large part among those suffering the worst in those situations. They are also, as you rightly say, fighting for what they see as absolutely crucial in their future. We have been monitoring what we called eco-anxiety or climate anxiety among children and especially young people, and we find that concerning. We see a large number of children worldwide that are concerned with what is coming and what their future will be looking like, including because of the impact of climate change, but also more generally environmental degradation. So we see many children, taking their place and asking for their right and their future to be guaranteed by decision makers and politicians making the right decisions today to preserve children's future.
Thank you very much for that, Cécile Aptel, Deputy Director of UNICEF's Global Office of Research and Forecasting.